Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today I have a very much requested review, and that is for the MEEDEN set of 48 half pan watercolor set. I noticed this on Amazon about a year ago, and since then every couple of weeks I get a viewer asking for a review. And I was kind of thinking, do I want to get another cheap set of watercolors to review, because it seems like a lot of them are just so very similar to other sets out there that I was kind of debating. It'd been in my cart for a while, and then last year actually, kind of before I noticed that set, I reviewed this set of watercolors, and this was such a surprise because it was 20 bucks. I've seen it, actually it's gone cheaper. It's like probably like $16.99 now. And I had such a ball with these. I used them a lot last summer. I really enjoyed them, and I'm still getting so many views on that video and so many people asking me about them. And then finally, MEEDEN, the company that I ordered these from through Amazon, even though it doesn't say MEEDEN on here, they're the ones that sold it. They contacted me and thanked me for reviewing their product and asked if they could send their watercolors. And I thought, well, this is a great opportunity because so many people had been asking me for a review on these. So they sent me these this 48 set of half pans. And they sent a, and you can see the review on this on my YouTube channel. I'll try to remember to link it so you can find it easily. They sent me, and this is what it looks like, the boxes look like on Amazon. And they also sent me a set of 24 tube watercolors, which I didn't know they made tube watercolors. And I was like, oh yeah, these kind of look like everybody else's set of 24 tube watercolors. They sell for 10 bucks. This set of 48 sells for just under 30, I believe. So, you know, they're definitely in the economy range. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna give them a fair review. I'm gonna, you know, put away any preconceived notions that I have about, you know, when you see a set of 48 colors for under 30 bucks, you kind of assume they're probably not very good. At least if you've been painting as long as I have. But I thought, you know what, I bought the Mungio ones last summer to review because a lot of people asked me for them. And when I bought them, I kept getting recommended the MEEDEN ones, which were like 20 bucks cheaper. But I thought, well, they got to be junk because, I mean, to get decent colors for 50 bucks is, you know, is pretty good for a set of 48. And I was a little disappointed with the Mungio ones, so I was like, I'm just done with cheap watercolors. But since they offered and people requested, I decided I would take them up on their generous offer. So I swatched out all of the colors and did a glaze, and before swatching I unwrapped the pans and I cut them out. This is a tip from a viewer, FK. She said she showed me that she did that with her swatches, and I said that makes so much sense because then you have all the information, if there's any, on the pans right there in your, like I keep all my swatches in a binder. I'll fold this in half and punch holes in it and put it in my binder, so I can go and see the lightfast rating. I can see the color number. Oftentimes the pan wrappers have pigment information. This does not have any pigment information on either the tube or the pan sets or the watercolor wheel fan set. So because of that, I put this in kind of the below student economy line. So I kind of break the watercolors or any paints up into economy or budget, student grade, and then artist grade. And you know, you can have budget colors that are just as good as student grade, but they just don't have the pigment information, which I find to be kind of important if you're going to put it in the student range, because then if you're buying a student tube of color, you kind of want to know what pigments are in there, so when you upgrade to the artist's color, you'll know you've got the right thing. I've explained that before in another video. I'm not going to get into that because I have a feeling this video is going to be kind of long, and you know, you can go find that video if you want to learn more about the different grades of watercolor. So I cut out my wrappers and I glue stick them down. I put lines with black permanent pen, and then I swatched each color from the pan set right here. And then I also did the tube set down here. So I found that the pan set was nice and smooth. The colors reactivated very quickly with just a wet brush. I didn't have to pre-wet them or anything. And I was very surprised that I could glaze over them and they didn't lift up what was underneath. So that was a really great sign. I was even able to glaze over on the tube colors and they didn't lift up underneath. I did the bottom, the first swatch with the wet paint, and then I let it dry overnight, and then I did the swatch on top. And I must say that I prefer working from the MEEDEN tube colors after they've been dried, and you re-wet them and you can control the amount of water in them. I often find that when you have the choice between a tube and a pan set of like a budget paint, that you're better off getting the pans, because oftentimes when you squeeze the tubes into a palette and they dry, they're just gonna pop off and they're gonna fall out of the palette. So that's something I wanted to test. I did just put a small amount into this palette and let it dry out thoroughly. Nothing has popped off. So I thought that was a really good sign, because this is a pretty glossy plastic palette. So if they were gonna crack and pop off, they would on this type of material. Something else, so this is the tube set, obviously. I showed you what those look like there. I'd say they're 12 milliliter tubes, so a decent size tube of paint if you're practicing. And then I did some mixing, and what I wanted to show you here, I'm gonna bring it up. I'm not sure if that's really gonna show up. I do see a little bit of sedimentation, which isn't our true granulation. I think it's an actual just like fillers in there, chalks to bulk up the paints a little bit. I'm not noticing it so much when I have just a single color out, but once I mix a few together, I can see that sedimentation in there. Well, this brown, I can see some sedimentation in there, which, you know, brown color, like earth tones do granulate anyway. But the colors on their own, I found them to be pretty good. And the colors that were like your obvious dye colors seem to work out really well too. So you can dry them down. That's a really good point, because a lot of times with your cheaper colors you can't. And for a $10 set of colors, you know, I think that's pretty decent. Thing I wasn't crazy about though with the tube set was that I found them to be kind of like streaky when I put them on like fresh from the tube. So if you look at this little swatch, and I use the waffle flower swatch stamps for that and just drew my little lines in there. I found their transparency to be all right, but I did find them streaky right out of the tube. So my recommendation would be, if you try these colors, because I mean it's $10, it's not a bad investment, especially if you're getting it for kids. You know what? I don't know about non-toxic though. There's no pigment information. It says non-toxic on there actually. It says excellent permanence, but I take that with a grain of salt with any, you know, with any budget colors, but it is non-toxic, so that's good. Let me check on the 48 half pans. Does it say non-toxic on that? It does not say non-toxic on the half pan colors. Okay, that could be why, because I did notice differences between the half pans and the tubes. So if you're getting these for a kid, definitely go with the tubes, just because they say non-toxic, and they'll dry out fine in your palette. So you can notice here between my glaze color, which I did from the dried down paint, the dried down glazes, I got a much smoother application. So I would definitely recommend drying them down in a palette. Honestly, because I have so many paints, I do like half pans, but I think like if you're going to have one set and you are going to dry it down, you'd be better off. I mean, this palette's fine. I like a covered palette with a little more room, like a big square studio palette where you could put a little bit like in the corner, then you can have room to add water and bring the paint up. So I would recommend that if you're starting off, or you're starting your kit off with a set of paints, so that they have plenty of room to mix. They've got, you know, room to squeeze out more paint. They can just squeeze out a little bit at a time, so if they get it contaminated, they haven't ruined like whole tube of paint. So that would be my recommendation. But color selection, I'm really pleased with the color selection in the tubes. I preferred the working ability and the color range in the pans, with one exception. There is no decent ultramarine blue. What they have listed as ultramarine blue is like a periwinkle. And I see this color a lot in sets that come from China, Korea, and Japan. I don't know why, but that is not ultramarine. That's not going to give you a good mix. They've got two blues that are kind of like the phthalo blue range. Then they've got this one here, which is called lake blue, which is also looks like a phthalo and white mix. And they have the sky blue that's kind of like a cerulean hue. It's pretty, but I feel like these are kind of redundant, especially since you have a white. And you know, why can't you do at least a decent cobalt blue or a decent ultramarine blue? So that's my only complaint with this set, is that I would want a actual ultramarine blue. Look, they did an ultramarine blue there that's just fine and dandy. You know, why isn't it not in the pan set when it's like the most popular, most useful color, honestly, in a palette? I mean, it's not, I wouldn't even say it's my favorite color, but it's definitely the color that I use the most and refill the most. And I think most artists are in that boat. Maybe not, but I guess maybe most New England artists are in that boat, because if you're painting landscapes, you're using the ultramarine blue up here anyway. Also, those two paints are pretty, those two pinks are quite samey. This is like a dirty version of that one. So, I mean, like you could omit that pink, these grays, you could put an ultramarine or some other colors you could like a lot. I love the greens. I love this medium green here. It's like a nice sap green. This here is a nice, like a nice hooker's green. They have some weird names, which I have come to just embrace in these kind of budget colors from Asia. They have, a lot of times they just use different names that don't make sense to me. Like this black green reminds me of Sennelier's forest green. But there's some really pretty colors there that would be nice if you're doing botanicals or you're doing kind of like loose florals, that sort of thing. I find quality-wise them to be very similar to the Mungio, Prima, Jane Davenport, very similar to the, I like these a little bit better than the Master's Touch paints, but pretty similar. If you had the Master's Touch, I probably wouldn't bother with these. It's going to be very similar, just a different color arrangement. Well, I'll compare it to other brands in a minute. Let's focus still on these colors first. So I did some mixing with the tubes and the pans, and I got good mixes. I'm not going to complain. I did kind of, you know, I mixed on the paper, not on the palette, just to get the colors down kind of quickly. I did notice in the mixes, like I mentioned before, especially with the tubes, some sedimentation. And this is because I had like pretty puddly color in there because I was curious to see how much there was for fillers and extenders. So I did a cool color wheel here. So I used like kind of like a fuchsia, a lemony yellow, and a like a Prussian blue. And the mixes did have some texture to them, some granulation. So that's something to kind of keep in mind if you like to work wet into wet. If you do not like that texture or granulation, then you won't want this set. So the granulation can come from two different things. It can come from an actual granulating pigment, like a mineral color, or earth tone, something with iron in it that's going to break apart, or something with another mineral in it that's just going to granulate. That's why like the Daniel Smith Primatech colors have so much granulation, because they're made from rocks that have been ground down essentially versus dyes. So you're getting, but the other way that granulation happens, it's not really a true granulation. It's a sediment of like chalks and fillers being put in the paint to stretch them and bulk them out. And that's what I believe is happening here. Because they don't, I mean, there is an ultramarine here, which I would say is the actual ultramarine pigment. So obviously there's some granulation, but why is there granulation in the red? That's kind of unusual. Cadmium could granulate, but they're not using real cadmium in a non-toxic paint set. So, you know, I think it's just the fillers. You know, they've put some white pigment, like some chalk in there to bulk it up a little bit. But still, I was able to get some decent mixes. And for learning, I think you would be fine. I don't think you would notice the loss of transparency if you're an absolute beginner, just kind of getting your first paints. I think you'd be fine. Or if you're just dabbling along in like an art journal and you're not like serious about glazing, or, you know, these being paints you're going to spend 40 hours on a painting with or something like that. And then I did a warm, well, that's my warm version, cool version. Even the cool colors granulated a bit, so that was a little problematic. Not the end of the world, but, you know, if I'm being, I guess I'm pretty nitpicky on the watercolors just because I have the most experience with watercolors over other mediums, so I notice these little subtleties. And then I just did 3 other primaries just for fun. I thought I would try this kind of murky teal color because I could see it was quite opaque. I tried this kind of opaque yellow and kind of a duller red just to see what I would get. And I did get some muted colors that I thought was pretty. These are pretty. These are easy to work with. If you let them dry down first, you're going to have an easier time working with them because you're not going to have the streaking issue. But, you know, they're all right. I really like the half pans, I have to say, other than the fact there's no ultramarine blue in there, which is a problem. That's what I used for the it's not even what they called ultramarine. They called that cobalt, which doesn't look like cobalt either. The closest to an ultramarine I could find there. But I actually like the half pans. In the cool color wheel here, I didn't see any sediments in the colors at all. Look, it mixed a really rich black when I mixed the 3 primaries together. That's a good sign. I got a nice orange, a nice purple, and a nice green. I could have added a little more yellow to that. So, I mean, your basic primary colors, cool color bias colors gave me beautiful mixes. The warm bias colors gave me rich mixes. I'm looking, there's not much sedimentation in the mixes, actually. I can see a little in the green maybe, but only in the one that had a lot of extra blue, because that blue was very, you know, it was kind of very dirty. You just look at that cobalt blue. It doesn't look like cobalt or ultramarine. It looks almost like a sludgy It's just kind of, it's just not that pure. It's not like that is ultramarine blue. That's what my ultramarine should look like. That's not what I had here. So, you know, given that, I think it did a pretty decent job. Wasn't the best, but is all right. And then I just did 3 other primaries just to see, and they worked really well too. So, so I really like the half pans. The tubes were okay. They're, you know, $10. I wouldn't complain. They're not, you know, they're a good price for what they are, for sure. And transparent wise, I think the pans are pretty transparent. I didn't really have any red flags. I mean, there was that kind of, you know, the sky blue color here, which, and the pinks and stuff, which when you glaze them, you can see they've got a little more haze to them. But it's nothing that I wouldn't expect with a pastel color either. So I think they're fine. I think they're decent. So let me put that over there, and I'll show you here. You know, these are transparent enough. Let them dry down so you don't have the streaky issues that I had there. But, you know, for $10, if you're learning to mix color, if you're going to be going through the paint and you don't want to spend a ton of money, try the tubes. As you use up a color, just kind of keep a swatch of it, and then go to the paint store and ask your, you know, your shopkeeper, can you recommend this color in an artist grade? And that's a great way to build your palettes. You can do it a tube at a time pretty inexpensively. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to show you was this little, I was doing a controlled wash, and it just wasn't working out very well for me for some reason, so I ended up doing it again. I tried to find 2 colors that were fairly close to each other between the pan set and the tube set, and I did a controlled wash. I'm going to show you the controlled wash test on another paper because it didn't work very well. But I figured I would do a lift test here and a glaze test just to see. So with a Taklon brush, I was able to lift this color completely off. It was, I think it was like their cobalt blue, air quotes cobalt. And then here I used, I don't know what they called that color. It was lake blue, because I figured that might have, you know, some whites in it, so it would be similar to, you know, that cobalt blue there. Both colors lifted off really well. This was with a stiff brush, like not a real stiff, like a Taklon brush. And I just wet it with water and blotted it off. They both came off clean. This was a soft brush lift. The tube came off almost to the white of the paper, just using a really soft Zen brush, the Royal Langnickel Zen soft brush. And then this one left a little staining, but this definitely has like a phthalo blue pigment to it, so it would want to stain a little bit more. But if you use just a stiffer brush, it comes right up. So if you like to be able to lift, that's good news for either of these sets. Then here, I just did some doodling in my sketchbook with the pans here and the tubes here from dried down, both from dried down paint. The pans seemed a lot more vibrant. I think from dried down, definitely the pans are a lot stronger in pigment. They have way less filler to them. I think tubes, it's easier for companies to add more filler, and that's usually why I go for pans. If I'm trying to decide between tubes and pans in a brand and I'm not sure of the quality, I go with the pans, because usually the pans will be a little bit better. And a lot of people think or say the exact opposite, so take that, you know, with a grain of salt. But you know, they painted down just fine. I didn't have any complaints. The colors flowed just fine. I would say they probably do contain oxgall. Nothing led me to believe that they didn't. Let's see. Oh, and the controlled wash. So I did the controlled wash again. I tried to find colors that I thought were about the same, and they looked pretty similar from my swatches. But I guess I used this green and I used that green. I probably should have grabbed that green, but in any event, I used 2 greens, which are mixed pigment colors, and the pans gave me a much smoother graded wash. The tubes were still a little bit streaky, even though I was working from dried down color, and I mixed up plenty of colored, and I took the same amount of time with each. So the pans, I would say absolutely go for them if you're looking for a travel set with a ton of colors. And you don't mind that there's no ultramarine blue. I would recommend adding the ultramarine blue to that. But yeah, I have no qualms with that. The tin seems to be good quality. It's similar to the Arteza tin. The paints are similar. I like the Arteza paints are a little bit less strong. They're a little weaker. They're a little chalkier. So I would definitely recommend these over the Arteza. They're also cheaper. You get 48 for under 30, and Arteza I think are 36 for $35. But they have a different color scheme. They're more like a fashion color scheme to them. Oh, did I show you? hardly any sedimentation on these colors. I let them dry on the palette just so you could see. And look at that, it didn't bead up too much on this palette, and I didn't wash it or anything prior to using it. So that's a good sign. The tray comes out as most palettes do. Watch, oh yeah, now I say that I can't get them out. I pressed the little prongs in a little bit so I could snap the pans in. So I'll show you here really quick. I've showed this before, but often, because these are wrapped when you get them, so you have to unwrap them all, and then a lot of times they kind of like wiggle around in there, or they slide around, or they come out. So all you have to do is, after you unwrap your pan, I actually take the end of my beveled brush, and I just go in and push between each of these to tighten the little lip in there a little bit, and then you just put the pan up against the rail in the front, and then you just snap it in there. It's going to hold it tight so they don't move around on you. So just do that after you unwrap your pans and you put them back in. And that goes for any palette. It's just, that's how metal palettes are. Now some boxes, paint boxes of 48, will have just like half an inch more space, and you'll be able to squeeze in another half pan in each row. You can't here. So I just wanted to mention that there is no room to put an extra pan. There's not enough space in here to fit more paints. Now a lot of people will take out this tray, and what they'll do is they'll just fill this with half pans and put magnets on the bottom. I don't recommend that because you get so many colors in there and it's so confusing, and then your colors are they're all touching each other, so your brushes will like hit the pan next door without meaning to. I mean, these are pretty close together, and 48 colors is more than enough. If you feel like you need more colors, remove some that you're not using and put them in. Like, you could discard the grays, you could discard one of those pinks, and like take out that pink and replace it if you use that one up. Put something better in there that you're going to use more. You know, so that's my advice. I mean, you do what you want to do a lot, because you could probably fit like 60 half pans in here if you wanted to like put magnets on the bottom. But I like that I could take this out and have more mixing area personally. I rarely need to. I usually don't need to, but I have that option. And it's in a nice like beautiful cobalt blue tin. I don't know if that probably looks black on the camera, but it's a beautiful blue, dark blue, which is different from any other palette I have, so I'll be able to just like spy it on my shelf and grab it when I want to use it. I'm really impressed with these. I think the tubes are worth the 10 bucks for sure. And one other thing I wanted to share with you is this palette they sent me, which I might have messed up. I'm gonna be honest here, but it's really sturdy. It reminds me of like the old bijou box that I have from Winsor & Newton, which is about the size of one of these quarters. But I love that it's like usually you have like circles, or you just have a flat rectangle. I love how it's like the wells have like are faceted. I don't know, it doesn't make any difference how you paint, but I could mix up a really big wash of like blue in here or something for a sky. And I love the matte paint on here. I think that it would probably keep stuff from heating up. I'm gonna give it a try. It's kind of just unique. I'm just dropping stuff everywhere. It's kind of unique, and I like it. So I'm just gonna grab that horrible blue. And yeah, you could mix up a lot in there. Let's see if it beads up over here. Actually, I'm surprised it is beading up. I haven't washed it or anything, but it has a matte finish to it instead of a glossy finish, which might be nice in tutorials. It might not glare, and it might, because I'm always looking for smaller palettes that don't glare. Oh, it doesn't stain, so that's good, at least with those colors. So what I thought was I could put full pans in the middle and half pans in the side, but I feel like it's the half pans are a little loose in there. They're not going to go anywhere though, so I guess it's fine. I wouldn't want to squirt paint in there, because then I think it might rust it out, just because you'd have all that water in there, but you could put your half pans in there. Just a hair too narrow for me to slide my full pans in there, even if I take out these rails, and usually that's what the rails are for, is to hold pans in. So maybe I'm missing something. Maybe the half pan I tried was a little on the large side, I'm not sure. But that's a new palette that they have offered. They sell so many different palettes very affordably. This is one of the more expensive ones, but they sent that along, and I just thought I would share that because it is kind of neat. It's got the thumb hold. It's pretty lightweight, and I find for travel a 48 set is just a little too big. It's a little too big and heavy. I don't tend to hold this palette when I'm working with it. I tend to leave it on my desk. So I just thought it would be worth mentioning. So hopefully that helps you if you've been wondering about these MEEDEN paints. Oh, you know what? I'll show you the other paints that I think they're similar to, just so you can get a comparison. Yeah, I'll do that with a smaller set. So let me bring my swatch book over. I keep all my swatches, my big swatches with like the pan labels in a binder, so that way I can compare and I can like see what colors I have where. Am I zoomed out? There we go. So this is the Master's Touch. Some of the colors are quite similar, like those plums. This one does have an actual ultramarine. These are, I think, milled a little finer. They're a little smoother. I do find many of the colors to be a little bit more opaque, but I would say they're comparable. Maybe it would be better for me to use this just so you get a better swatch. But some of the colors are quite comparable and very similar, so that's why I said if you have the Master's Touch, I wouldn't bother unless you're just really looking for some of those like interesting greens and some of the other colors, because the colors do not overlap completely. So there's Master's Touch versus MEEDEN. Similar in price too. I think their Master's Touch are regular like 40 bucks and they go on sale for 20 quite frequently, and the MEEDEN are like 29, I think. This is the Mungio set here. Very similar on the same, oops, there we go. This is on the same paper. Quite similar. Some of the colors are a little different. They actually have a nice ultramarine blue in there. They don't have these gorgeous, well, they have one of those plums. What they call Crimson Lake is like the dark purple there. I would say they're very comparable. I would say they're, you know, I'd probably say the Mungio and the MEEDEN and the Prima and the Jane Davenport are equal. Just, you know, go with the one that has the colors that you like, would be my suggestion. And oh, one thing I did like about the MEEDEN set, this color here, they call reddish brown. It's like a transparent brown oxide. It's like a transparent burnt sienna that's really red biased. Like that color an awful lot. It's really pretty. Okay, so that's the Mungio and Arteza. Let's look at the Arteza here. I'm just gonna move the Mungio aside. The Arteza I found to be just a little bit weaker. It's almost like the colors are like a fashion color, like they're just a little different than your typical colors. So, you know, they do give you a new range to add, but they lack some of the basics like ultramarine blue, a true warm and cool red. You know, every color is just a little bit off on the Artezas. They want everything just a step off, so they'd be different than the other colors. So, but quality wise, I'd say pretty equal. They're a little bit murkier, and they stain the paper a lot. So if you like lifting, the Arteza is going to stain more than the MEEDEN will, or the Mungio. The Mungio lifts. The MEEDEN's easier to glaze than the Mungio. The Mungio I had trouble glazing. It would just lift everything up underneath, even with a soft brush. But I could do glazing with the MEEDEN colors. So that is a benefit. I could also do the glazing with the Master's Touch too. So kind of take that with a grain of salt. I guess I'd say the MEEDEN ones are probably the closest to the Master's Touch now that I think about it. MEEDENs reactivate a little bit quicker. They're a little bit stronger. So, you know, for 30 bucks or 48 colors, I really don't think you can go wrong with those either if you're looking for that sort of thing. That's all I have to say for today. I know this is pretty long. I appreciate you watching. Please give me a thumbs up before you go, and I'll have links to all of these in the video description. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy crafting.